Corla. Taoiseach, I want to bring to your attention the Rebuilding Ireland home loan and the anomaly there for people who have been divorced or separated or with long-term partners. They need to be considered in any reform. But under the current Rebuilding Ireland home loan, there are technical exemptions from the first-time buyer clause for people who have gone through a separation. However, this information is not being shared properly with people making applications. Indeed, people are being refused despite actually qualifying in some local authority areas. So a separated person who has got enough for a deposit, say, from the sale of the family home, but is refused a mortgage from financial institutions, is then refused from the local authority and has nowhere to go. They're often with children and they're driven into the private rental sector, often at the mercy of landlords and of real estate investment funds. But families are often left in this very difficult situation with nowhere for them to go. Taoiseach, can you discuss this with the Minister for Housing, and can you have people who have suffered family breakdown, can you include them in the Rebuilding Ireland home loan?
On just generally on rents, which covers a number of questions, again on the rent freeze, look, government has been advised in the strongest possible manner that it's unconstitutional to do a 3-year rent freeze. Now, I remember before when opposition put forward a commercial rent freeze, you remember that years ago before an election. Subsequently, when people got in, they couldn't do it because they were told it was unconstitutional. That was a different government to this government. So it's easy to say in opposition, but what we're being told is it's not possible. I think the Minister is very committed, to, however, to getting rents, to controlling rent price increases. And you know, there was the outgoing situation in July when pressure zones until the end of 24 they were extended, prohibit any rent increase in an RPZ from exceeding general inflation as recorded by the Harmonised Index of Consumer Prices. And that this measure significantly reduces the level of permissible rent increases for the estimated 74% of all tenancies which are in RPZs. In addition, until 2025, rent reviews outside of RPZs can occur no more frequently than biannually, and it remains the position that rent reviews in RPZs can occur no more frequently than annually. The Housing for All commits to strengthening security of tenure. That has been raised by deputies, subject to legal advice, by legislating for tenancies of indefinite duration, and work in this area is now underway. There have been increased funding for housing assistance payment to support new tenancies. The operational costs of Residential Tenancy Board, 11 million additionally provided to carry out its work, an additional 2 million on top of what was there, bringing it to 11. 10 million for the rental inspections programme was allocated for 2021 to assist local authorities to achieve inspection targets of private rented accommodation. From July the 16th, as we know, the previous cap of 4% on annual rent increases was replaced, and rents in RPZs can only go up if necessary in line with general inflation. Minister Bryan, now as part of rent reform legislation due to be brought before the Oireachtas this session, will seek to ensure that effective rent controls are legally enforced in RPZs by introducing a cap. Rent in RPZs will only go up, if necessary, in line with the general inflation as recorded in the Harmonised Index of Consumer Prices, to a maximum cap which is yet to be determined. So, in essence, we want to do everything we possibly can to keep rents down to the lowest possible level. When he brought in the Harmonised Index, that was done in good faith. Obviously, international commodity prices have gone through the roof, and there's a general global inflation drive, which now means that has to be reviewed to see can we get a realistic cap to keep the levels of rent increases down, because they are very high in cities, too high for people. That's something, but ultimately it's supply. We've got to get building supply up. We've got to build more houses for affordable, for rent, and for social housing as well, to take pressure off the HAP system, take pressure off the private sector systems, and give people proper security of tenure in social houses. And progress has been made this year, notwithstanding the lockdown. The sector is coming back strong in terms of commencements and so forth, but we'll wait and see in terms of the end of the year to get the figures in respect of that. Deputy Lahart, I think, made a very good suggestion in respect of a sort of transparent, tangible picture of the affordability landscape for people who wish to buy a house, that they could have some sense of what's happening over time, and I feel that is a very fair point. In terms of strategic development zones, which I think Deputy Murphy raised, again, the Minister is moving to, in terms of the expiry of those, and then in terms of making sure that the right amenities are put in place in largely built-up areas. That's ongoing work, and there's significant capital money has been allocated to local authorities to facilitate the provision of such amenities in large housing conurbations, and that money is there. In terms of the whole O'Connell Street, Hammerson development, it's going on for decades. It's at the moment it's terrible in terms of the dereliction that is there. The government moved to secure by buying the national monument. There's always a balance to be struck in these situations. I have no interest really in going back another 10, 20 years. I do really think we need to transform O'Connell Street and to make it a modern, thriving street in a modern city like Dublin, and give opportunities for people, whilst also bringing in, as part of that, and bringing really to the fore something which has never really happened, is the incredible heritage that the 1916 site represents. And I think there's opportunities now, but if we keep putting it on the long finger, and I regret to say this, Deputy, but I get the sense there's huge politics in this. I just get the terrible sense that here's another campaign now to undermine because there's a lot of people who are involved in this. I didn't. It's not. I'm not paranoid at all about it through the chair. But what I would say is that a lot of people across the House here were involved in trying to bring this to a conclusion. A lot of people in the council across the party divides. But yeah, to bring this to where it's at now, if we go back again, there's no guarantee it could take another 10 to 15 years, and that is a realistic perspective on it, I'd have to say. Could I just say that the key issue in terms of the rebuilding home loan, it is provided for. I would understood, and I'll come back to the Deputy, in terms of someone who's divorced or separated, that they would have access to the rebuilding home loan, and they should have access to it. Deputy McAuliffe raised a key issue on the Metro. I think our Minister Eamon Ryan was misinterpreted. He was trying to give a realistic timeline as to what will happen with the Metro, given what we know about big infrastructural projects in terms of planning and CPOs and all the rest of it. But there is a commitment to doing it.